Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling "To Avoid Being Scapegoats, Progressives Must Break Decisively with Dem Party Leadership." So the immediate occasion for this episode, for these thoughts that I'm sharing, is that there has been major redistricting in New York State. A lot of it has been mismanaged by the Democratic Party there, and the efforts to be both nonpartisan but then partisan and nonpartisan, it's very confusing because the thought was that Democrats would, in their states that they control, attempt to compensate for the huge gerrymandering that is being done in the Republican controlled states, but at the same time a judge has now thrown out the Democrats' favored map, and it's created conflicts between a number of different Congress people. Established Congress people are running against each other in the same district now. Jerry Nadler and Catherine Maloney are in the same, or Carolyn Maloney, I'm sorry, are in the same district now when they previously were in separate districts, and they are two veterans that are running against each other. And then Sean Patrick Maloney, who is the head of the DCC, and he's up the Hudson River Valley some from New York City, he has decided to, instead of running in his old district or in a district where he, it's been slightly redrawn, he's decided to bump the district that's further south, that is Mondaire Jones' district, which is still also north of New York City, and it's the city. It's the home district of Mondaire Jones. It's where he grew up actually, and so, but this choice by Sean Patrick Maloney is a act of war, as well as not just an act of war, but an act of unethical leadership on his part. His job is to try to get as many Democrats elected overall, but instead he's removing himself from being elected in a district where he has a very good shot of getting reelected, to then poach a district that looks to him to be still easier for him to retain, and it means campaigning against a progressive Mondaire Jones, who's junior to him in the House caucus, Democratic caucus. And so this move has led, among others, or particularly AOC, who's I would say now the undisputed leader, with the exception potentially of Bernie Sanders, of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and so she, especially certainly in the House, and of the actual progressive wing rather than the wannabe progressive Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is an intermixture of non-progressives and progressives. So actual progressives who don't take corporate PAC money, who are people funded, are a smaller group, and among them I consider AOC to be a leader. And so AOC has exerted herself now in the last day or so in endorsing Alessandra Biaggi, who's running now against Sean Patrick Maloney, or in that district that he moved into, that Mondaire Jones moved out of, and now Mondaire Jones is competing in a district that's further south. It's actually in the city of New York itself, and he's actually competing against Bill de Blasio, which is also unfortunate, who is running for Congress. So, but I think this move by AOC is very important, and I think it should be a harbinger of things to come in terms of her actions and also the actions of other progressives, in terms of fighting back against the centrist efforts to sideline and blame the progressives for, among other things, the likely disastrous showing of the Democrats in the upcoming election in this year in November. So we have, both in the media and then also various political figures, have attempted to blame Joe Biden's problems on his listening too much to progressives. So the Build Back Better agenda, so forth and so on, that he, instead of it being undermined by the right wing of his party and also by Republicans, and also by Biden himself in terms of his efforts to solicit the help of the GOP and also to not disturb at all the internal opposition in the party, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, to be complementary and not particularly confrontational with those people. His decisions have been turned around to, in the media accounts, and perhaps in Biden, it's not clear whether Biden himself is totally sold on this particular approach, but there's many Democratic operatives in the center of the party, or the right wing of the party, you could say, who are pushing this line that it's in fact the bad progressives that have misled the party. And even though Joe Biden campaigned on some progressive things, that in fact that's what's led to his fall in popularity, and ignoring that the trajectory of his popularity was in fact when he got progressive things done, he was popular, and then when he stopped doing progressive things, or when he was talking about progressive things but also talking about them as pie in the sky, as being things that the parliamentarian should have ultimate say about, that in other words, basically relying on bureaucratic excuses for not taking action on his agenda, and also the things that are not even involved with Congress. For instance, student loan debt forgiveness, he could do it all at once with a stroke of a pen. He prefers instead to make up excuses about why he can't do that. So anyway, we see a emerging picture of whatever alliance that existed between progressives and the center of the party is certainly now on some issues, or in terms of political strategy, is now being attacked from the center or the leadership of the party. And we now, I think, need to see more actions by progressives that are harsher, that point out that it's the centrists that have bungled this enormously. The centrists who have no idea of how to deal with the fascists in the GOP, and that are and that they need to, and they're not simply not doing their jobs. For instance, Sean Patrick Maloney not trying to maximize the number of Congress people, but instead playing infighting with his position of power, and in a way that's destructive and really not helpful. So there's the idea that the centrist leadership of the party, for instance, I'm bringing back an embarrassing moment for AOC when she said, and Nancy Pelosi is quote unquote mama bear, okay, as if they are accommodating parental big tent kind of people who allow people into the family, so to speak, who have differing views in the Democratic family in terms of orientation of the party overall. That seems to have been brutally exposed as a vanity or a fond hope on the part of AOC and anybody else in the left wing of the party, that really you have two sets of enemies. One is your party leadership and the other is the GOP. And it's a two-front battle. And so I think that now this is a lot to ask, I understand, but I think it's and it's not as though, I don't think they should be spending all their time in criticizing their leadership, but I think that they should be spending a fair amount of time or using strategic exposures of the failures of the leadership to suggest to them that they should get back on track, that they need to be serving the American people. And I think that also, and this is something I'll bring up in a future video, I really think there needs to be a decisive progressive challenger to Biden-Harris in 2024. And that needs to be part of the agenda of the progressive movement, as electorally, certainly electoral part of it. I think it should be AOC. I think AOC should run for president and create a movement-style presidential campaign that brings this sort of agenda of different parts that is now the sort of the kind of the lingua franca of progressives: Medicare for all, Green New Deal, police reform, anti-racism, and student loan forgiveness, free public education up till graduate school or beyond through graduate school, and at public universities. So anyway, all of these planks need to be put into a platform, and then I think progressive needs to run on them, and I think AOC is the best one to do that. So, and she's shown this recently now with this willingness to take a leadership role and to anger the corporate leadership of her party. And and this is something that she and others have been roundly criticized by the left, or the wannabe left, in the blogosphere, in the in social media, so forth and so on, and who have called them sellouts and so forth and so on, and it's not as though this decisively answers that, but certainly it's a sign that that AOC certainly and others probably are not just able to play nice with their party leadership, but they need to find a way to, I guess, there's a word called toleration from parliamentary politics, where you have multi parties in the parliament, where one party can tolerate the other party, doesn't necessarily support them. And so internally in the Democratic Party, there needs to become basically a toleration agreement between the progressive wing and the leadership. So anyway, this campaign to scapegoat the progressives isn't over. This move by AOC doesn't end it by any stretch of the imagination. There'll be more efforts to throw her and others into this role of being the problem with why the Democrats are failing. But that is a total, I mean, beside me being a partisan of the progressive positions, it's just also a enormous ethical lapse by the Dem leadership, basically not being able to maturely evaluate their own role and to course correct what they've done wrong. And they're blaming progressives is another way to just avoid their own culpability. And it's just simply, even if you are a partisan of their political orientation, you should be ashamed of this kind of effort to blame others for your own problems. And so it's not unprecedented for this wing of the Democratic Party, the center right wing of the Democratic Party, to do this, but it's Hillary Clinton did it, and her supporters did it. They blamed Bernie Sanders for Trump's victories and so forth and so on, or Susan Sarandon. So it's not as though it's and Susan Sarandon has now kind of become a joke in a way, I mean, not literally her, but it's the use of her name as an excuse by the Democratic leadership is become a joke among the left, because Susan Sarandon obviously is not all powerful. So anyway, please share your thoughts in the comments below, and please like the video if you liked it, and please subscribe to Politics 2100 for more videos like this and others. Thanks.